Okay, so it is time for another review, and if you have not seen my reviews before, I split them up into two sections, spoiler-free and spoiler. With the spoiler-free section, I give you 3 pros and 3 cons for the book so that you can determine if you think this is the right book for you in a spoiler-free way, and then we jump into the spoiler section where I get to rant or rave in as many details as I want in a spoilery way. So let's get right to it. Today we are reviewing my very first ever double tome, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, book 1 in the Stormlight Archives. Now, before I begin this review, I just have to say, I'm so happy to be here right now. I planned on reading The Way of Kings this month in October, way back in March, and it has been a long time coming, and it's just so nice to not only have started the book, but to have finished it and now be here and get to discuss it with you guys. So thank you for being here. Let's get right into it. Again, we're starting with the spoiler-free section. So if you have not read this book, don't worry. I'm not going to go into spoilery detail. I'm just going to give you 3 pros and 3 cons for you to determine whether or not this is the right book for you. We're going to start with the cons because it's always good to end on a positive note. And my first con for this book is the size of the book. So for me, I read this book as a 2-parter. These 2 versions. So we have The Way of Kings Part 1 and The Way of Kings Part 2. And for me, the total of these 2 books comes to 1,119 pages. But my plan was always to replace them with the one book bind-up that is generally only sold in the US, because in Australia we usually only have those 2. So I'm very happy that I got this one delivered to me. This version of the book is 1,001 pages, but either way, whether you're reading either edition, they both go over the 1,000 page mark, which makes them a double tome. And because of this, and because it was the very first double tome that I had ever read, it was tough for me to navigate. Usually what I'm used to is reading a book that averages around 350 pages, and so to read 350 pages and still have, 3/4 of the book still to go was really tough to deal with. Now, I'm someone who reads every single day. I put aside time to read, and that is anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a day. And even for me, putting aside 2 to 3 hours a day, it took me a week and a half to complete this book, where generally speaking, for someone like me who does read a lot, I average about 3 books in a week. So to get through a week and a half and only have completed one book was tough for me. Despite the fact that I do love this book, I wanted to be reading more books as opposed to reading a really massive book. So if that does turn you off, you should know that going in. The second con kind of ties into the length of the book, and that is the fact that Brandon Sanderson is known for writing epic fantasies. The very first book that I read of Brandon Sanderson was the Mistborn: The Final Empire, this book. And this book is an epic fantasy read, but comparatively to The Way of Kings, this book kind of reads like My Little Pony in its epicness. It's nothing compared to the other ones. So if you've read The Final Empire and you're thinking that it's not going to be so vast because you're used to Brandon Sanderson with The Final Empire, please keep in mind that this is nowhere near as epic as this one. Because of the epic nature of this book, it took me a very long time to feel grounded in this world. In fact, I feel like it took me at least a good 250 pages, which is roughly the first quarter of the book. It's coupled with the fact that Brandon Sanderson takes his time in the beginnings of series and the beginnings of books alone, but also because the world is so vast, in my opinion, he wants to show everyone just how vast it is. We are following 4 characters throughout this book, their perspectives mainly, and once you get a grasp on it, it's okay. It's just, it does take a while, and I wanted to warn you of that. My third and final con for this book is that there are interludes. Now, if you've seen any sort of long movies, you may have seen interludes prop up at the halfway mark, so everyone can take a little bit of a break. There are 5 parts within the one story. And at the end, between the conclusion of each part and the commencement of the next part, we have an interlude of at least 3 chapters where we are zipping off to a completely different area within this world with a completely different character who has at least nothing to do with this book. I don't know if they're going to come up in future books or not, but we're being introduced to all these characters that we don't know, and so we'll have 3 random chapters that discuss 3 different random people who are in 3 different areas for goodness only knows what reason. I want to give you guys a 4th con. Generally speaking, I don't do 4 cons. Sometimes I struggle to find even one, but this con is also very subjective, as are the rest. And that is the fact that this book is incredibly action-packed. Now, you might be thinking, Mr. Francy, why are you calling that a con? Isn't it a really good thing that we're getting an action-packed book? And generally speaking, I would say yes. But the problem is when you have a lot of action-packed scenes that are occurring where a foundation has not been fully laid yet for us to know enough about characters to be invested enough in them. There are 2 characters that we follow in this book. When we first meet these 2 characters, they're being thrust into a war and they're fighting an enemy army, so to speak. We don't know these characters. We have no reason to care about them. All we know is that they're fighting an enemy army, and that's really it. And that can be really annoying. I love action scenes in books, but one thing that The Way of Kings taught me regarding action scenes is I much prefer a solid foundation to be laid for characters, for me to know and learn enough about them to be invested in them before we go into those action scenes. But those are the 4... different for usual, but those are the 4 cons for this book. My first pro for The Way of Kings has to be the writing style, because Brandon Sanderson writes with a really easy to read writing style. It's pretty easy to read, and for that I do have to give Brandon Sanderson a lot of credit. The second pro for this book is the plot itself. While it does take a little bit of time for me to feel grounded and invested in this world, once I was, man, were we in for a really epic journey that I enjoyed. I became incredibly invested in these characters, and it was just an amazing journey to read and to get through, and so many twists and turns and things that I did not expect along the way, which does lead me to my third pro for this book, which is the twists and the turns and the just unexpected events that come out of certain situations. So as I say, we're following 4 different characters, and each of those different characters end up doing things that shocked me or surprised me, whether they did it themselves or whether it was done to them. And Brandon Sanderson, I mean, I've read a lot of his books. He always seems to find a way to dupe me, and he did that again with The Way of Kings. My final pro that I'm going to give you is the characters themselves. I think that, again, I need to make the point that we need enough ground laying to be invested in them. But once we are dealing with these amazing characters. Kaladin, who is this guy who was in an army rank where something happens with him and he ends up becoming a slave, and we live with him as he's going through that. The second main character that we are following is Shallan. Shallan is the only female perspective that we are following, and she is a scholar. So basically her backstory is that her father is a very political figure, and there were issues back in the day prior to the book beginning where her father left them in a pretty bad way, and when I say left them, he is dead before the book begins, so she is now trying to find a way to assist her family by trying to make some money, and so she's traveling to go and visit a princess by the name of Yasna, hoping to work with her, and if she does, to get the money she needs to send back home. Shallan herself is just a wonderful character. She is sharp, she is witty, she is sarcastic, she is strong mentally and physically, and this made her, for me, a really compelling character. And our final 2 characters are Dalinar and Adolin. Dalinar is the current High Prince of this world. Well, in the world of the Stormlight Archives, there are many different areas. Let's kind of view them as states, if you will, within a country. And in each state, quote unquote, there is a High Prince. Dalinar is a High Prince of his area, and Adolin is his son. Dalinar is going through something really intriguing. Adolin, meanwhile, plays the role of the skeptic's son. that's basically Adeline. We don't really learn a lot about Adeline in this book. He's more there to dispute his father. All in all, I love this book. I thought it was amazing. As I said, I read the two-parters. I read these two. This is part one, yep. And respectfully gave them 4 stars and 5 stars. I highly recommend this book, keeping in mind everything that I've said in this spoiler-free section, keeping in mind the fact that it is a slow beginning, keeping in mind the fact that it is an extremely long book, keeping in mind the fact that it is such a vast world that it is going to take you a while to feel grounded and to feel centered in this world. But if you can do that, if you can push through all of those things, then you are in for an epic journey that you are going to love. Oh, the final thing that I forgot to mention earlier on with my cons is that if you're the type of reader who loves Brandon Sanderson like I do because of his magic systems, please note, warning, mayday, mayday, don't go into this book wanting to find the magic system, because you will be very much let down for a very long time. While there is a magic system in this world, the magic system does not prop up until the final quarter of the book. There are things that I mentioned along the way regarding the magic system, but it's not a hard magic system like we're used to with Mistborn, where everything is very much explained to us, whether it's in exposition or whether it's explained from the perspective of a mentor to a student. We don't have that in this book. Brandon Sanderson will mention that this character used this ability, but we don't know what the ability is. We don't know anything about it. So we get to a complacent point where we're thinking, oh yeah, okay, that's that thing that I have no idea what it is. We finally start working out what it is towards the end of the book. So please, please, please don't go into this book hunting for the magic system from page 1, because you'll be sorely disappointed. But the book itself is incredible and I highly recommend it. We're going to move on now to the spoiler section because I've said more than enough of the spoiler free. So I don't know about you, but when it comes to reading books, I love to watch reviews of what other people think. Sometimes I'll watch the reviews before I do my own ones, sometimes I'll watch them afterwards. The majority of the reviewers that I've been seeing have been jumping right to the spoiler section and not doing a spoiler-free section, which is why I wanted to be quite insistent on having a spoiler-free section here. But one of the reviews that I came across when it came to the spoiler section was focusing their spoiler section of their review on the characters and using them as the sort of categories that they're going to go into. And I'm going to do the same thing because I think it is the easiest way, Zeth, but I don't think that there's enough for me to go on. I do appreciate what's going on with him. I love the whole lore of the stone thing and how whoever picks the stone up, he is under their command. I did love that. I love the twist at the end with Zeth, oh my gosh, and how that guy, the new master, was revealing to him what was going on in the hospital with all the people. Oh my gosh, the end of this book, the whole book is epic, but the end of this book was just, everything was an oh my god moment. But I think Zeth was just kind of introducing them piece and parceled out here and there, but he wasn't really a main feature to this book. Dalinar and Adeline. So Dalinar, the High Prince. Okay, the fact that we have Dalinar and Adeline just running in to battle these beings the first 2 times we get their perspective, we don't know anything about them. It just became really confusing to me. Even the first time they went into battle, I was thinking, wait, what? Who? What's going on? Who are these people? I don't know you. And then the second time, what? Why are you going to battle again? I need to know who you are before I come invested in you. If someone kills you right now, I'm not going to care because I don't even know you. So, to me, that was something that I did not appreciate. But when we finally got to learn about Dalinar and about Adeline, I really started to appreciate Dalinar. I love these visions. When he went into that vision where he saw the woman who was kind of convinced that he was her husband, and then they had the child and they had to escape the house and all that kind of thing. Oh my gosh. That whole vision was so epic. Oh my gosh, I love that vision. And then this voice that kept telling him, unite them, unite them. To me, I loved to have a voice saying to this high prince, unite everyone. Rather than fight everyone, unite everyone. I thought, this is a really good idea. Please listen to this guy, because clearly he knows what he's talking about. Adeline, for the most part, Adeline annoyed me. And as I said in the spoiler-free section, and I completely believe this to be the case, Adeline was put into this book to play the role of the skeptic. He was just there to say, Father, you're not having visions, you are going insane. And then when Dalinar becomes convinced by what Adeline is saying that he is going insane and decides, you know what, son, I'm going to abdicate the throne, then Adeline all of a sudden is like, oh, no, Father, you can't do that. I was just saying that you're going insane, but I mean, really? Who is this guy? I just wasn't a fan of Adeline when Kaladin said to Adeline, you need to retreat. The guts that it took to say to Adeline, you need to retreat. You're not going to win. Call your men in. I was like, oh my God, go Kaladin. We'll get on to Kaladin very, very soon. But working out that the visions were real. Yay. Oh my gosh. So we'll jump back and forth here. It's a bit, you know, mismatch pitch podge here. So the moment when the S guy, High Prince S, Saudius, I think is his name, when he betrayed Dalinar and left the battle, I was very upset with this guy. Excuse me, how rude. You get your butt back here right now and start fighting, okay? I mean, so that really upset me. But then, oh yes, which reminds me, then when we had that scene with Saudius here, Dalinar here, and they had their respective armies behind them, and they're just having this conversation, and then basically somewhere along the lines, Dalinar says to Saudius, okay, I'm going to be taking your slave people home with me, and Saudius says to him, oh, well, uncle, that is my property, and if you're going to take my property, then I'd have every right to attack you. So, but then when Dalinar summoned his shard blade and offered it up to Saudius for the slaves, oh my gosh, I love Dalinar so much in that scene. When Dalinar gave up the sword, it was so good. And then Kaladin saying to Dalinar, why would you do this? As is Saudius, why would you give up the sword? And it was so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I have so much love for Dalinar for doing that. But now let's talk about Shallan. So, I love Shallan. If you're a writer and you give me a headstrong, mentally strong female protagonist that is incredibly intelligent, I am going to love her. For too long, I've read books that kind of put women down and have them as second fiddle, and while this book attempts to portray that with the differences between men and women, I think it was Navani who said it best, who said, we women were put on this earth to create things and you men were put on this earth to destroy things. And she's saying it in that way of, did you ever think how odd this is? Like, yeah, it is. I love how Shallan is trying to break that whole mold and say, you know what, men can think that they're meant to do this and women can think they're meant to do this, but I'm me and I'm going to do things my way. I loved how she went to the bookstore and thanks to the guy that she was with originally who was helping her, I forgot his name. I hope he comes back because I liked him. And he was helping her haggle and everything. From that moment where we learn just how intelligent she is, we learn just how witty she is, we learn just how dry her sarcasm is. Oh my gosh, I loved Shallan. And anytime I wasn't reading about Shallan, there was at least a little piece of me thinking, I want my Shallan to come back. But from what I have heard, apparently book 2 is Shallan. So yay, that makes me want to read it even more. And then when Shallan gets into the palace and she speaks to Yasna and Yasna rejects her, but then Shallan ends up staying around anyway to convince her again and finds a way to eventually get, worm her way in so she can start working for Yasna. Yes! Love it. That's how smart she is. She's not just going to take no for an answer and leave. Then she steals the hand thing, the shard bracelet or whatever it's called. I don't remember. The fake one that she didn't know was fake. And then, oh my gosh, then we had that epic moment where she's drawing the priest dude, and she sees that figure in the background of her picture, and then the being starts talking to her, and oh my gosh, it's just so exciting. And then the only reason he's getting close to her is because he wants to get close to Yasna to try and kill her, because we have that whole jam poison scene, which was so good. And then Shallan ends up admitting to Yasna about how she stole the bracelet and all that kind of stuff, and then she's crying in the jail cell, and I thought, oh my gosh, we're never going to see her again. She's going to go home, and just, yeah, goodbye Shallan, we're not going to see her anymore, which is so sad. But no, like the true hero she is, she continues to fight. And she's still with Yasna now, and Yasna's going to teach her more about the magic system to do with the being that she is, which I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's okay. Oh my gosh, anyone who doesn't like Shallan, can you please comment below so we can talk about this, because how can you not like Shallan? Alright, let's talk about Kaladin. This guy, Kelsier. If you have not read this book, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm just saying he's the main male protagonist in this book, and I fell in love with him, and he was my favourite male character for the entire year since I've read this book. No male character has ever rivaled him until this one, where Kaladin he's so close. If he does one really good thing in Words of Radiance, then he will take over Kelsier, which I never ever thought would happen. So I love what Brandon Sanderson did with Kaladin, how we get his backstory as well as what's going on in the present. I did not appreciate it at the beginning of the book because I felt like I was being pulled from pillar to post. But once I got used to what Brandon Sanderson was trying to do, then I really started appreciating it. And especially, I started looking for key things to help me realize if we'd gone back in time or not. And the moment that, for example, Tien was mentioned, I knew we were back in time because Tien was obviously his brother. The moment that Tien got killed, oh my gosh, I had a bit of a moment, I will tell you, because Tien is such a beautiful man. Like, he has such a beautiful soul, a beautiful spirit within him, that he doesn't want to create furniture. He just wanted to create that little animal for Kaladin. And he just has he's always smiling and trying to be positive, and such a beautiful, beautiful spirit. And then he is killed, and oh, that moment when Kaladin sees that he has been killed and he wasn't able to help him, oh, my heart was ripped out of my chest. Obviously, we have all the other stuff with his father and how his father's trying to raise him to be a surgeon. He thinks that is what he's supposed to be. I thought the chance encounter of the High Prince coming down and forcing Tien to become a part of the army, which in turn made Kaladin want to volunteer to become part of the army, was a really good thing, because I don't think Kaladin would be best served being a surgeon. The fact that he knows the small amount that he does know, that was able to assist him to assist his crew members when they were injured, kind of shows that he wasn't meant to be a surgeon. He was just meant to learn what he had learned up to that point before he joined the King's army. Okay, let's jump ahead. The moment when I made the connection that Bridge 4 is being controlled by High Prince Saudius, who is the brother of King Kaladin, was a moment. It's coming together now, and oh my gosh, like, this book is so good. I really appreciated going, oh, okay, so you're actually being ruled by Saudius, who is the brother of Kaladin, and how we can see the connection here. Okay. Because I'd seen some reviews, some spoiler-free reviews, where I'd seen some people say that the perspectives don't merge, but in that moment I realized that there was going to be at least the merging of Kaladin and Dalinar, because even if nothing else had happened, being able to work out that Kaladin's boss, or slave master if you will, is Saudius, who is the brother of Dalinar, makes that merging connection anyway. So I really appreciated that. Bridge 4, and how no one's talking and everyone's just, you know, off in their own world, and Kaladin just wants to make friends with everyone and form some kind of camaraderie. And then we have that whole moment where he's strung up outside so that the storm god can deal with him, which I finally get why we have the storm on the cover. I mean, storm light archives. And he survives the night, and Oh my gosh, it was so good. The epic scene of him going through the night. Brandon Sanderson could have had a very easy out by saying something like, and Kaladin waited to see what would happen. And then the next paragraph would start with, it turned out that Kaladin went through the night and it was rather uneventful, but the following day, no, Brandon went there. He explored the scene of what was going on that night. We got to experience it through Kaladin's eyes, how he was being affected and impacted by the storm, and it was so good. He finally becomes the leader of Bridge 4. And so he introduces himself to everyone individually, tries to learn all their names. Then he and Rock do the whole stew thing, so that brings them together in a camaraderie way. We end up in the chasms, where they're learning how to fight with spears. Go Kaladin! We do not need to be slaves. Let's start an uprising by preparing ourselves to be able to fight in case we have to, but that isn't our goal. Our goal is to escape, and oh my gosh, I was so happy about this, and I couldn't wait for them to escape, and it was setting up such an epic escape that I was just, oh my god. But then it didn't happen. But what was so good about the fact that it didn't happen was it didn't disappoint me that it didn't happen. But Brandon Sanderson went for the better option. Rather than them escaping, Kaladin again risks his life, this time to try and save Dalinar and Adolin, and oh my god, it was so good. I could go on and on and on, as you can tell. This book took me a hot minute to get into. But once I was there, it was amazing. Brandon Sanderson. This guy is just a master at writing so many different things, whether it be his characters, whether it be his epic plots, whether it be his twists, his turns, his betrayals. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Brandon Sanderson, this guy, he writes for me. No, seriously, he's in his office thinking, I wonder what Mr. Francy will want to read in about 2 years' time, because it'll take that much time to get out there. Well, by the time he's read this, and this, he'll be in this sort of a mood, so I'm going to write this for Mr. Francy. He literally writes for me, because I haven't picked up any of his books that I downright hated. But this book, pick up this book and read it. It was an epic journey. I absolutely loved it. And you best believe that the first book I'm going to be reading in November is going to be The Words of Radiance, because I need to continue on this journey. So 5 stars, Brando Sando, you've done it again. This was incredible, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. But that is where I am going to leave it. I'm going to let you guys go with peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'll see you again soon.